we move on to the election of the vice chair of the committee, since for every following vice chair we will be voting separately. So, are there any candidates for the post of vice chair of the Committee on Agriculture?
Chairman, I propose Julia Moy as first vice chairman of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agnew. Mr. De Castro would like to take the floor. You have the floor.
Presidente, propongo...
Chairman, on behalf of the Socialists and Democrats, I'd like to propose as first Vice Chair, Eric Andrieu.
Czy mamy więcej zgłoszeń?
Any other candidates? That is not the case. Can I ask whether the candidates nominated agree to stand? Mrs. Moy, do you agree, or are you willing to stand for the post of first chairman? Thank you very much. Mr. Andrieu.
Wszystkie zmiany zastępstwa mamy.
Okay, so we have dealt with the substitutes and we can move on to the vote. Can I explain that when you want to vote for Mr. Andrieu, you're supposed to press the green button, and when you want to vote for the other candidate, you press the red button, and if you want to abstain, you press on the white button. Is that clear? We now move on to the vote. We are voting on the first vice chair of the committee. The vote is open.
Bardzo proszę.
We've got a problem with the voting machine here, okay. Chairman, I'm afraid.
Okay. Czy ktoś jeszcze ma problem?
Anyone else has got a problem with the voting machine? If not, then please let me know. But for the time being, I open the vote.
Open the vote? Open the vote?
Głosowanie otwarte.
The vote is open.
One socialist too many voting.
Mamy za dużo.
There is one socialist too many, so we should correct it.
One socialist too many. Yes? We have to do it again. There was one.
Proszę Państwa, musimy powtórzyć głosowanie.
I'm afraid we'll have to repeat the vote. So, as I said, one socialist too many. I open the vote, says the chairman. The vote is open.
Głosujemy.
The vote is open. Anyone having problems with casting their vote? That is not the case. The vote is closed.
Głosowanie jest zamknięte.
The vote is now closed. We have elected Mr. Andrieu, 27 votes, Mrs. Moy 8, 5 abstentions. We have elected the first vice chair, Mr. Andrieu. Congratulations to Mr. Andrieu. And now we proceed to the election of the second vice chair. Any candidates? Mr. Nicholson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have great pleasure in proposing Mr. Janusz Wojciechowski, who has been a Vice Chairman of this agriculture for the last 5 years. I have a great pleasure in proposing his name to take on that role.
Pan poseł
Mr. Wojciechowski, and I ask you whether you are willing to stand, Mr. Wojciechowski.
I agree.
Tak, pan poseł się zgadza. Zgłasza się pan poseł Des.
Mr. Des.
Thank you very much. In place of Peter Jahr, Mrs. Schreier will be voting instead.
Bardzo dziękuję, panie pośle, przyjmujemy.
Okay, we take note of that. And we will record it. If Mr. Wojciechowski is willing to stand, and if there are no other candidates, I suggest that we proceed to vote to select Mr. Wojciechowski by acclamation. Thank you very much. And I'd like Mr. Wojciechowski to come to the top table. We can now proceed to the next vote. Congratulations to Mr. Wojciechowski. And now the third vice chair of the Committee on Agriculture. Any candidates for the post of third vice chair? Anyone? Candidates for the third vice chair. Mr. De Castro has the floor.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. I'd like to give you the name for first vice chair of Garcia Aguilarez on behalf of the Socialist Democrats.
Kieruję pytanie do...
Can I ask the candidate whether she is willing to stand? Mr. De Castro, one more time.
Presidente, purtroppo la collega...
Sadly, Aguilar can't be with us today, but in writing indicated his willingness to stand as first vice chair.
Any other candidate?
Procedura dopuszcza tak...
This is admissible. Are there any candidates, any other candidates? That is not the case. So we can proceed to the vote. There's only one candidate. But Mr. Agnew would like to take the floor.
I'm going to propose Mr. Zullo for the EFDD group for the position of the third vice chairman of this committee. Thank you.
Same vote, the same procedure. Zulo can be candidate, he's full member.
Pan poseł Zelo jest...
Mr. Zolo is a full member of the committee, so he can stand for this post. And is the candidate willing to stand, is my question.
Tak. Tak. Mamy zgodę.
Okay. If that is the case, we can now move on to an electronic vote in the alphabetical order. Mrs. Aguilera Garcia, the green button, and Mr. Zolo, the red button. Is this clear to everyone? If that is the case, we can move on to the vote. We have two candidates. I repeat, Mrs. Aguilera Garcia, the green button, Mr. Zolo, the red button. The vote is open.
Rozumiem, że mogę przystąpić do zamknięcia.
I understand that we can close the vote. There are no technical problems, and therefore the vote is closed.
Pani poseł.
Mrs. Aguilera Garcia, 24 votes. Mr. Zolo, 11. So Mrs. Aguilera Garcia has been elected the third vice chair. She is absent, but she is welcome to join the Presidium. Now we move on to the election of the fourth vice chair of the Committee on Agriculture. Are there any candidates for the fourth vice chair of the committee? Mr. De Castro, you have the floor.
Sì, Presidente, desidero annunciare.
Yes, I'd like to say, on behalf of the Socialists and Democrats, Dancila Vasilika would like to stand.
Czy pani poseł...
Is Mrs. Vasilika willing to stand?
Da, sunt de acord.
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Yes. Are there any other candidates for this post? Mr. Agnew.
Sure, whether it's permissible to vote to propose the same individual for two separate things. As Secretariat are nodding, so I will re-propose Julia Moy for the position of fourth Vice Chairman of this committee.
Tak, jest to możliwe, Sekretariat.
It is permissible, says the Secretariat. So is Mrs. Moy willing to stand? She is, so we have two candidates. And two female candidates, which is very nice indeed. We will be voting in the alphabetical order. So, the first candidate, the green button, and Mrs. Moy, the red button.
Czy wszystko jest jasne? W takim razie otwieram procedurę głosowania.
Okay, everything is clear, so the vote is open.
Głosowanie trwa. Przystępujemy.
The vote is still open. If there are no technical problems, the vote is now closed.
Pani poseł.
Mrs. Dancila, 26 votes, and Mrs. Moy, 11 votes. Congratulations to Mrs. Dancila, and could you please come to the top table? Congratulations.
Proszę Państwa, przebrnęliśmy.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have elected the Presidium of the Committee on Agriculture. Our time is limited because another constituent meeting was going to take place in a moment. Mrs. Moy is next.
Moy. Bardzo proszę.
Mrs. Moy, you have the floor.
I would like to say just one thing, and that's today the democracy has been killed by you.
Dziękuję pani za...
Well, thank you very much for this statement.
Już koniec.
There's one more person, Mr. Dess.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to let you know that we need to finish our discussion, but I don't think democracy has lost today. We voted democratically, so democracy won.
Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much indeed. One more person.
Planned before, so that is no real democracy.
Bardzo proszę, pan poseł Ferrand. Ferrand, bardzo proszę, pan poseł Ferrand. Krótko, bardzo proszę.
Mr. Ferrand.